Hey there guys, it's me Yogi again and welcome to the third video of the Git Basics series. In the previous videos we covered what is the basics of a Git and how to create repositories and how to create commits. In this video we'll see all about Git Remotes. A Git Remote is the way through which we can collaborate or share our projects with our team. Think of a remote as someone else's repository. Every local repository can be associated with a number of remote repositories. You can push your changes to another repository and also pull the changes made in a different repository into our own repositories. In practice, we generally associate our local repository with one single remote repository which we call as origin. The origin can be a GitHub, BitBucket, GitLab, or even your organization may have its own Git server. These are Git hosting services. This is called the origin, and all your teammates will use the origin remote as the single consistent point of truth. As and when you make additional commits, you can push the changes to the origin remotes and your teammates can pull the changes you made from the origin into their local repository. That's how Git remote actually works. That is the difference between Git and GitHub actually. Git is a tool that we use to manage our software projects, whereas GitHub is the place where we can store the projects that were created using Git. So I have the same repository we used in the previous video, and let's see how to connect this local repository to GitHub so that I can collaborate with my friends. Head over to github.com and create an account if you don't already have one. In this video we'll be using GitHub, but the instructions should be similar for all Git services. Let me create a new repository. Git is the home for a lot of open source projects, even the big ones like Linux, Node.js, etc. I'll give a name for our project and an optional description. Here we can see two options, that is public and private. For a long time GitHub was only for open source projects. That is, whenever you add a project to GitHub, it will be visible to anyone. They can download the entire source code, they can suggest changes, etc. But after Microsoft acquired GitHub, they made private repositories possible. That is, I can specify only certain people who can access to the code that I store in GitHub. Also, there are some other options like adding a readme file, git ignore, choosing a license, etc. Ignore them for now. We'll proceed with creating a repository. Git itself will show you the commands that you need to connect your local repository into GitHub. The first four commands are just used for connecting. The first four commands are just used for creating a new commit. But we have already created a new project and added some commits, so we will ignore the first four commands. Check out the fifth command, git branch -m main. It was something that was recently advocated by GitHub. Before we proceed, let's head over to the terminal and use the command git status. See that it tells me that I am on a branch called master. If you recall from the first video, we saw that branches are like parallel versions of your code. Whenever you create a new Git repository, it will create one single branch and the name of this repository is called master. Why is it called master? Because it is like the main branch in your project. As your project evolves, you will be creating more branches, and after the change you make in every branch, you will merge the changes into this particular branch. This branch master is what will contain the production code. This is what you will be pushing to production. So GitHub recently advocated that we should not use the word master. Instead we can use the terms like main. So this command is for renaming a branch. I am going to rename the branch from master, which is the current name, to main. Okay, I have configured my GitHub account to use main as the default name for all repositories, so that is why it shows me this command. So next is our main command. Let me break down this for you. Git remote add origin and followed by a URL. So remote, it means that it is operation that is related to remote. Add means that we are going to add a new remote, and origin is the name for the remote, and it is the URL, that is where this remote is residing. So I'll add this command, I'll execute this command. Okay, and finally we have the command called git push -u origin main. I'll break down this as well. So git push is for sending the changes in your local repository to GitHub. But the first time we are using the command git push, we have to specify this additional argument called -u origin master. What it does is it will create an upstream. An upstream means that we are currently in our local repository, we are currently in the branch called main. We have renamed it to main, so we are currently in the branch called main. So what this command tells Git is that whenever I use the command git push, it should push the changes to the origin repository. The origin is now our GitHub. We have configured it using the previous command. We added a remote called origin. So whenever I use the command git push, it should send the changes over to the origin remote, and particularly the main branch in the origin remote. So only the first time I have to use this command called git push -u origin main. Further we can use simply a git push. I'll execute this command, and if you generally if you try this command, it will ask you for your GitHub credentials, that is email ID and password. But in my system I have configured it in such a way that my GitHub credentials are stored by Git, so it will not ask me each and every time. I will cover that in a future video. But for you, when you try this command, it will ask for the GitHub username and password. So try to refresh this page. We can see that whatever we added in our local repository has been pushed to GitHub. So I'll add one more commit just for demonstrating. I will add some content in index.html, and I will create a commit using VS Code itself. I can do the commit. Control Enter will create the commit. So now I can simply use the command git push. No need to again specify the upstream configuration. This command is actually a combination of two commands. It will first create an upstream configuration and then push the changes to the upstream. So it is a combination of two commands. But once you have configured the upstream, you can just use git push. No need to again specify the upstream configuration. That I have given the git push now. It should be reflected here. It shows me that the last commit was added content. It was made 37 seconds ago. If I open this index.html file, I can see the change I made over here.
Let me take over from Yogi. From his machine, he created a GitHub repository and showed you how to connect to. He added me as a collaborator for the repository. So now I am capable of making changes to the repository. He gave me the URL for the repository. Now this repository is in GitHub. I have to create a copy of it in my machine so that I can work in it. To do that, the Git Clone command will come in handy. Just use. Provide your GitHub email ID and password if prompted. But for me, it doesn't ask because I have already provided. A local copy of the repository in GitHub will be made available in this folder. I will add some lines to the index.html and some links to the style.css. Now let me commit this. Now I have to push all these changes to GitHub. For that, I can simply do git push. No need to configure the upstream this time because Yogi has already done it. Now refresh and it will now refresh GitHub and it will show the new changes that I made. Over to Yogi.
Hi, it's me Yogi again. I had given Vishal access to this project, and let's see if he has made any contribution to the project. To do that, we can use the command Git Fetch. What this command does is it will ask Git to check with our remote repository to see if there have been any changes that we are not yet aware of. That is, if there are any commits that were pushed to GitHub that we have not integrated inside our repository. Now if I check Git status, see what it is telling me. Your branch is behind origin main by one commit. Remember that we have configured our upstream to origin main, that is our local branch main is as the upstream configuration set to origin main. So it is telling me that our local branch is behind origin main by one commit. That is, there has been one commit that is available in GitHub that is not yet available in our local repository. We have to integrate that. If you notice, we can view the same information in the status bar provided by Visual Studio Code. It tells me that I am currently in a branch called main, and there is a number 1 next to the downward pointing arrow. What it means that it means the same thing, that is our local branch is behind our origin by one commit. So to integrate that commit inside our local repository, we can use the command Git Pull. This command will pull all the changes, that is pull the one commit into our local repository. So Vishal had added a paragraph tag, so it is available in my repository now. We can also see the updates here made by using this extension. I can click on each file name to see what change Vishal had made. He has added some content in HTML as well as the styles.css. Visual Studio Code will automatically will ask you whether it can automatically run this command git fetch for you. That is, whenever you clone a repository or whenever you add a remote to a repository, it will show you a message asking do you want to run git fetch periodically. This will ensure that we are staying in sync with whatever is going on over at GitHub. Whether your teammates have pushed any changes, you can integrate them. Bear with me, I am going to create one last commit in this video. So let me add a script over here, just some random content. I will create a commit using VS Code itself. I will create. Now I have created a commit in our local repository. I have to push these changes to GitHub so that Vishal will be aware of this. But instead of doing git push, what I can do is come to the same icon here. Now it shows that 1, but it is next to the upward pointing arrow. This means that our local repository is one branch ahead of origin main. The same information can be checked through git status. Your branch is ahead of origin main by one commit. That is, we have made a commit in our local repository, but we have not yet pushed to GitHub. It also recommends what command we can use. Use git push to publish your local commit. I can go ahead and use git push, but instead what I can do is, if I click on this icon itself, Git will that is VS Code will automatically push and pull all the changes. It is called the synchronized changes icon. If there is any changes we have to pull, or if there are any changes we have to push, by clicking on this icon, VS Code will take care of everything for us. So I'll go ahead and click this. it will tell me this action will push and pull commits to and from origin master. If I click OK, my changes will be pushed to GitHub. So it is now sending all those changes. Yeah, now it's done. If I go ahead and refresh, we scored the currently it shows me that the last update was made by Vishal Raj. If I refresh the page, so I added an alert. So it is the last commit we are seeing. So to summarize, we saw what is a remote in GitHub, how to configure our remotes, that is how to we can add a remote repository. We saw what is the origin remote, what is the significance of that, and we also saw how to push our changes to GitHub and how to pull the other changes that are available in GitHub to our local repository. And also we saw how to configure the upstream, that is where to send these changes. So in this example, I had I was referring to things called branches. You may not be very comfortable knowing what is a branch. So the very next video will be covering the branches. What are branches? What are merging and things like that. So stay tuned. Thank you.